Joe. Thank you for being here. Okay, so uh, we're going to continue on repaying debts of gratitude. And in case, um, we have a lot of charisma or attachments of ideas to words. And is Nietzsche talking about so far as debts of gratitude? Um, he's not repeating that statement very much, but so far it's pretty clear that he's pointing to examples, excuse me, pointing to examples in his own day, his own life, and the life of his followers of these previous teachers of other sects, other schools of Buddhism, who have taken for granted their own practice, really. You would think, since they're leaders of their schools, that they would be very um, scholastic in the sense that they read thoroughly all of the sutras they claim to know, and that they would, for themselves, then re-justify clearly for themselves the premises of their schools and their forebearers, the founders of their schools, for instance. And it seems, as Nietzsche is pointing out, that they're just taking it as written and not questioning or not digging deeply in an effort to truly understand. That's not to say, hey, he's not saying you should also always question your the authority of your teacher um, as a manner of course, because you have to have respect, you have to have good conduct, right? But at the same time, if you're really going to claim scholarship and leadership, then questions are essential, because through those questions is how we learn. So, yes, question your teacher, not from a disrespectful standpoint, but from a zeal for deep comprehension, understanding, right? Certainly, if you're somebody in a leadership role, it's incumbent upon you to question what you're given and research your own depth in order to, at very least, justify the point of view that you've inherited, right? And to Nichiren, this is repaying a debt of gratitude, right? Um, this is probably not the typical way you might understand that statement, but if you truly want to honor um, your parent, your teacher, your school, even your own premises, your biases, then you should be actively questioning the foundations of what those beliefs or understandings are. Because if you don't, and you just say, well, that's what I believe because that's what I heard or that's what I read, then you are not forming your own opinion, your own insight. And in Buddhism, that's everything. Because if you don't form your own insight, then you don't guide yourself to your Buddha nature. You're simply, again, being in samsara, attached to something somebody else said or created, someone else's insight. And, you may get benefit from that, but the end result is not enlightenment. And the whole goal, the whole practice, the whole premise of Buddhism is for each of us, through our own deep insights, discover, reveal, and invoke, enlighten, awaken our maximal potential, our clear mind, our clear understanding of what life as a process simply is in everything, let alone ourselves, right? The same pot. So, Right now, he's talking about the other schools that are around because this is something he continuously has to fight against these erroneous influences. So he's doing due diligence and he's demonstrating how to do that. So let's continue. We come now to a time 500 years after the beginning of the middle day of the law, or 1500 years after the passing of the Buddha, and at that time in China there was a wise man who was at first known as Qi Yi, and later as the great teacher Tendai, Qi Che. He determined to spread the teachings of the Lotus Sutra in their true form. There had been thousands and thousands of wise men who preceded Tendai, and they had held various opinions concerning the teachings set forth by the Buddha in his lifetime. But in general, they were grouped into 10 schools or traditions. There's that word again. The so-called 3 schools of the South and 7 schools of the North. Of these, one school emerged as foremost among them. This was the third of the 3 southern schools, the school of the Dharma teacher Fa Yun of the temple called Kuang Che Su. Fa Yun divided the teachings of the Buddha's lifetime into 5 periods. From among the teachings of these 5 periods, he selected 3 sutras, the flower garland, the nirvana, and the lotus. He declared that among all the sutras, the flower garland sutra ranks first and is comparable to the monarch of a kingdom. The nirvana sutra ranks second and is like the regent or prime minister, while the lotus sutra ranks third and is like one of the court nobles. So it's interesting that he ranks first, the first sermon that Shakyamuni delivered, the Flower Garland Sutra, and as we've already discussed, he only taught that for a couple of weeks before he gave up on it because his students, the people just weren't ready to understand his experience of awakening and enlightenment. They needed, after all, Shakyamuni went through 6-7 years of all sorts of study and privations and every manner of attempts, methods, and teachings to awaken something. He didn't even know what it would be other than his desire to find this simple core truth that would relieve the life experience, certainly as humans, of suffering. All the varied meanings of what that means. Suffering it's an umbrella term, right? So he didn't know. He wasn't enlightened yet. So he wanted to be enlightened. He wanted to find this answer. And so when he found the answer and started telling people, they looked at him like they just couldn't get it because they hadn't gone through some path of their own to achieve the capacity even to understand, to create these insights for themselves, had to be a precursor in order for them to then understand what enlightenment was, what it entailed, how it worked in the human mind, and how then to invoke it, to enact it, right? So yeah, I could see how I could say, well, that's the monarch, that's the leader, right? The Nirvana Sutra being the final on his deathbed sutra, it just was basically, this teacher was looking chronologically instead of critically at what was being said. And then the Lotus, because the Nirvana spends such time building the Lotus as the spot, the teaching, he gives it the tertiary position of being, the working noble. It's an interesting construct. It looks very simple for him to create that triad, and that's the school that rises to prominence in China. All the other sutras are inferior to these and are comparable to the common people. So this is the scholarship of the day, right? Fa Yun was by nature extremely clever. Not only did he study under such men of great wisdom as Hui Quan and Hui Yen and Seng Zhao and Hui Tzu, but he refuted the doctrines of various teachers of the northern and southern schools and retired to the seclusion of the mountain forest, where he devoted himself to the study of the Lotus, Nirvana, and Flower Garland Sutras. So he was able to construct good enough arguments to claim that he was right, and that he was right in assigning the relative worth of these sutras. As a result, the Emperor Wu of the Liang dynasty summoned him to the court and had a temple called Kangche built for him within the palace grounds, paying him great honor. There's that support of the authoritarian government with the tool of influence historically in civilizations, some form of religion, right? It's the best PR. When Fa Yun lectured on the Lotus Sutra, flowers fell down from the heavens, just as they had done when Shakyamuni Buddha first preached it. So, the words of the Lotus Sutra and the power of Myoho Renge-kyo is in the sermon, and that he revered it as third, but amongst the three that he picked, no less diminished the words of the sutra, right? So the sutra has its influence, and when he would lecture on it, it would have this great effect over people. In the 5th year of the Tenchien era, about 506 in the Common Era, there was a great drought. The emperor had the Dharma teacher Fa Yun lecture on the Lotus Sutra, and when he reached the verses in the Parable of the Medicinal Herbs chapter that read, quote, "The rain falls everywhere, coming down on all four sides," soft rain began to fall from the sky. The emperor was so overwhelmed with admiration that he appointed Fa Yun on the spot to the rank of administrator of monks. And he served him in person as the heavenly deities served the Lord Chakra and as the common people look up in awe to their sovereign. In addition, it was revealed to someone in a dream that Fa Yun had been lecturing on the Lotus Sutra ever since the time of the Buddha Sun Moon Bright in the distant past. So he was achieving folkloric status, right? Fa Yun wrote a commentary in 4 volumes on the Lotus Sutra. In this commentary, he stated, quote, "This sutra is not truly eminent," and spoke of it as an unusual expedient means. By this he meant that the Lotus Sutra does not fully reveal the truth of Buddhism. Was it because Fa Yun's teachings met with the approval of the Buddha that the flowers and rain came down on him from the sky? In any event, as a result of the wonderful and unusual things that happened to him, the people of China came to believe that the Lotus Sutra was, in fact, perhaps inferior to the Flower Garland and Nirvana Sutras. I mean, this guy's displayed enormous insights, so he must be right. This commentary by Fa Yun was in time disseminated to the kingdoms of Silla, Pakche, and Koguryo, and to Japan, where people in general came to hold the same opinion as that prevalent in China. Again, this is what happens with successive iterations of something, is that the questioning ceases to happen, and it's just acceptance that occurs. So without checking into it, without doing their own study, or taking their own study for granted, the renown of a teacher precludes your questioning what is said. And this is how things are inculcated into society, right? Shortly after the death of Fa Yun, in the latter years of the Liang dynasty and in the early years of the Chen, there appeared a young priest known as Dharma teacher Qi Yi. He was a disciple of the great teacher Nan Hui, but perhaps because he wished to clarify his understanding of his teacher's doctrines, isn't that what I was saying earlier? This is true debts of gratitude. He wanted, and I'll say it again, he wished to clarify his understanding of his teacher's doctrines, right? What could be more respectful than to not just accept, but to dig into one's own insights to demonstrate appreciation for? Otherwise, you're just a repeater, a rubber stamp. You're not. Your identity is missing in that. You become something other than what you should be manifesting. Your own insight, your own intellect, your own understanding. This is everything in life is like this. He entered the storehouse where the scriptures were kept and examined the text again and again. So he read them for himself. He singled out the flower garland, Nirvana, and Lotus Sutras as worthy of special attention. That made sense. And of these, he lectured on the Flower Garland Sutra in particular. In addition, he compiled a book of devotional exercises in honor of the Buddha Vairocana of the Flower Garland Sutra, and day after day furthered his understanding of this scripture. The people of his time supposed that he did this because he considered the Flower Garland Sutra to be foremost of all sutras. But he was still studying. But, people will make up their minds for the strangest reasons, always looking to follow. That's part of an authoritarian mindset. People like to follow, be told what to do, not have to think too hard, not have to put in their own energies. Just tell me what's right and I'll do it, right? That's not a Buddhist mindset. But let's continue. In fact, however, he did it because he had grave doubts about Fa Yun's assertion that the Flower Garland Sutra was to be ranked first, the Nirvana Sutra second, and the Lotus Sutra third. And he therefore wished to make a particularly close examination of the Flower Garland Sutra, the one that his teacher particularly pointed out as superior. Now that's a Buddhist. That's a student of Buddhism right there. That's what the study component of our 3 pillars: study, resolve, and practice. What would we do without water? After he had done so, he concluded that among all the sutras, the Lotus Sutra was to be ranked first, the Nirvana Sutra second, and the Flower Garland third. He flipped it. He also observed in sorrow that although the sacred teachings of the Thus Come One had spread throughout the land of China, they had failed to bring benefit to its inhabitants, but on the contrary caused people to stray into the evil paths. And what do we know about evil paths? They're paths of distraction from the goal. They're paths that, although you're studying incorrectly with false assumptions, and that's guiding you away from the goal, from your enlightenment. This, he concluded, was due to the errors of their teachers. Oh boy. It was as though the leaders of the nation had told the people that east is west, or that heaven is earth, and that common people had accepted their assertions and believed accordingly. Later, if some person of humble stature should come forward and tell them that what they called west was really east, or that what they called heaven was really earth, not only would they refuse to believe him, but they would curse and attack him in order to ingratiate themselves with their leaders. So here's the fallout of wanting not to do the work, but to simply accept. And if somebody points out that the emperor's naked, not wearing new clothes, the shock to the system is, you're going against our history, our traditions. You can't just do that. Who do you think you are? Right? Chi pondered what to do about the situation. He felt that he could not remain silent, because it was very clear to him, obviously. And he therefore spoke out in severe condemnation of the Dharma teacher Fa Yun of Kung Che Su Temple, asserting that because of his slanders against the correct teaching, he had fallen into hell. I'm sure that didn't go down well. With that, the Buddhist teachers of the North and South rose up like angry hornets and descended on him like a flock of crows. Right? Oh, we need to silence this guy. Why did they react that strongly? Maybe because they were a little insecure about what they were proffering in their traditions. And that if this kid's right, we're all going to look like clowns. We need to squash him. Right? Just like contemporary politics. Some proposed that Chi should have his head smashed. Others that he should be driven out of the country. The ruler of the Chen dynasty, hearing of what was going on, summoned a number of Buddhist leaders from the north and south and had them appear in his presence along with Chi so that he could listen to the proceedings. Chinese were a big fan of live debate, and these were events, not closed-door events, but events where the entire public that could be there could witness the argumentation, right? Sorry, I'm running out of juice here. Thought I wasn't doing that anymore. Hopefully that didn't mess up the video. Okay, sorry, let me just... Okay, if you're still with me, there was such, let's see, Chi, so that he could listen to the proceeding. There were such monks, head monks, as Hui Chung, a disciple of the Dharma teacher Fa Yun, presumably to stand in his defense, and Fa Sui, Hui Quang, and Hui Hiang, over 100 men, some in the ranks of administrator of monks and supervisor of monks. They struggled to outdo one another in speaking ill of Chi, raising their eyebrows and glaring angrily, or clapping their hands in an impatient rhythm. The Dharma teacher Chi, though he was seated in a humble position, far below the others, showed no sign of emotion and made no slip of speech. Instead, with quiet dignity, he took notes on each of the charges and assertions made by the other monks, head monks, and succeeded in refuting every one of them. Then he began to attack his opponents, saying, quote, "According to the teachings of the Dharma teacher Fa Yun, the Flower Garland Sutra ranks first, the Nirvana Sutra second, and the Lotus Sutra third. In what sutra is the proof of this to be found?" Right? Not just his opinion. Okay, you revere him as a teacher, but he's teaching Buddhism, and he's teaching from these same sutras. So where is his burden of proof? Where does he come up with this order of priority and superiority of sutras? Please produce a passage that gives clear and certain proof of this. Don't take his word for it. Look at Shakyamuni's words. What does he say? This is what we're practicing. Pretty bold, Pressed in this way, the other monks all lowered their heads and turned pale, unable to say a word in reply, because they'd been blindly following a patriarch, right? They didn't do enough study for themselves. They didn't pay proper debts of gratitude. They instead were political animals, simply repeating and parroting whatever worked. And if they knew or questioned what Fa Yun was saying, they did so in their own way and felt the liberty to do so because all their studies and rhetoric was based on opinion rather than close analysis and study. This is true of everything in life, right? He continued to press them, saying, quote, in the Immeasurable Meanings Sutra, the Buddha says, Shakyamuni says, then I preached the 12 divisions of the correct and equal sutras, the teaching of great wisdom, and the flower garland teaching of the ocean imprint meditation. Thus the Buddha himself mentions the Flower Garland Sutra by name and denies its worth, saying that in these sutras preached before the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra, I have not yet revealed the truth. Wham! He gave them an opportunity to cite the sutras themselves, and they turned pale. They didn't have anything. So he turns around and gives them something, but it doesn't uphold what they're saying. It upholds what Chi-E is saying. In fact, what Shakyamuni is saying, right? If in the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra, which is inferior to the Lotus Sutra, the Flower Garland Sutra is attacked in this way, then what grounds could there be for asserting that the Flower Garland Sutra represents the highest achievement of the Buddha's preaching life? Gentlemen, if you wish to show your loyalty to your teacher, there it is, then please produce some scriptural passage that will refute and override this passage I have cited from the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra and vindicate your teacher's doctrines. And on what passage of scripture do you base your assertion that the Nirvana Sutra is superior to the Lotus Sutra? In the 14th volume of the Nirvana Sutra, there is a discussion of the relative merit of the Nirvana Sutra in comparison to the sutras of the Flower Garland, the Gama, correct and equal, and wisdom periods, but no mention whatsoever of its merit in comparison to the Lotus Sutra. My mouth keeps drying out, I apologize. Chi-E continues. Earlier in the same sutra, however, in the 9th volume, the relative merits of the Nirvana and Lotus Sutra are made abundantly clear. The passage states, quote, when this Nirvana Sutra was preached, the prediction had already been made that the Lotus Sutra, that the 8,000 voice hearers would attain Buddhahood, a prediction that was like a great harvest. Thus, the autumn harvest was over and the crop had been stored away for winter when the Nirvana Sutra was expounded, and there was nothing left for it but a few gleanings. This passage makes clear that the other sutras were the work of spring and summer, while Nirvana and Lotus Sutras were like a ripening of fruition. But while the Lotus Sutra was like a great fruition, in which the harvest is gathered in autumn and stored away for the winter, the Nirvana Sutra was like the gleaning of the falling grain that takes place at the end of autumn and the beginning of winter. In this passage, the Nirvana Sutra is in effect acknowledging that it is inferior to the Lotus Sutra. And the Lotus Sutra speaks about the sutras that have been already preached, are presently being preached, and are to be preached in the future, including the Nirvana. By this, the Buddha is indicating that the Lotus Sutra is not only superior to the sutras preached before it, as well as those preached at the same time, but is also superior to those he will preach afterward. Now that's right from the Shakyamuni's mouth, right? If Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of teachings, the one who established this practice, right, laid it down so clearly, What room could there be for doubt? Nevertheless, because he was concerned about what might happen after his passing, he determined to have many treasures Buddha of the world of treasures purity in the East act as a witness to the truth of his words. Therefore, many treasures Buddha sprang forth from beneath the earth and testified to the verity of the Lotus Sutra, saying, quote, "The Lotus Sutra of the wonderful law," so on and so forth, "all that you have expounded is the truth." In addition, the Buddhas of the 10 directions, who were Shakyamuni's emanations, we all know what that means, gathered around and put forth their long, broad tongues until the tips reached to the Brahma heaven, as did Shakyamuni's, to witness the truth of the teachings. Don't forget, emanations is not only of Buddha's mind, but it is our minds. We are connected to that Buddha realization that Shakyamuni himself had. We all have that to look forward to, because that is what we're trying to realize, that very enlightenment of Buddha nature, which is innate in all living things. All we need to do is reveal it. How do we reveal it? Myoho Renge Kyo. That's what making Myoho Renge Kyo, the Lotus Sutra, the primary practice, the ultimate practice, the culminating practice, whatever language you want to use. After that, many treasures Buddha returned to the world of treasure purity, and the various Buddhas who were emanations of Shakyamuni returned to their respective lands in the 10 directions. That's all humanity. Then, when neither many treasures Buddha nor the emanations were present, Shakyamuni Buddha preached the Nirvana Sutra. If he had claimed that the Nirvana Sutra is superior to the Lotus, would his disciples in fact have believed such a thing? This was the way Chi-E, the great teacher Tendai Chi-Che, chided them. He was like the brilliant light of the sun and moon striking the eyes of the Asuras, or the sword of the Emperor of Han, pressing against the necks of his barons, and his opponents accordingly closed their eyes tightly and let their heads droop. In his appearance and manner, the great teacher Tendai was like the Lion King roaring at the foxes and rabbits, or like a hawk or an eagle swooping down on doves and pheasants. As a result, not only did the fact that the Lotus Sutra is superior to the Flower Garland and Nirvana Sutras become known throughout the whole of China, but word of it had also spread to the 5 regions of India. There, the Indian treatises of both the Mahayana and Hinayana divisions of Buddhism were inferior to the great teacher Chi-Che's doctrine, and the people there praised him, wondering if Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings, had appeared in the world once again, or whether Buddhism would now have a second beginning. Wow, quite a revolution. So we talk about Nichiren being a reformer and a revolutionary, but in fact this is a consistent thing throughout Buddhism. Scholarship rises up and washes away egos and earthly matters that conspire to, and not even, I shouldn't say conspire, because that only leaves room for a conscious effort to distract and move away from center. It's just a lack of scholarship. And this happens with everything. A discovery is made, and those who bother to really dig into that discovery flourish, and those who can't be bothered and just want to ride the wave of interest for their own self-interest, they can't ultimately compete with the truth. This is the same in anything, in any system. And because of our amazing power to attach ourselves to things, our attractions to making things permanent, it is unfortunately part of our human nature to fall for it at all levels of the spectrum, from teacher to student to whatever, ordinary human. In time, the great teacher Tendai passed away, and the Chen and Sui dynasties came to an end and were replaced by the Tang dynasty. The great teacher Chang'an also passed away, and there were very few who continued to study the type of Buddhism taught by Tendai. So he's accelerating the timetable, but he's demonstrating a not too far away point in Japan's history, because Japan was so colonized and created from Japan and other Asian communities, right? Certainly in respect to Buddhism. Then in the reign of Emperor Daicung, there appeared a monk named the Tripitaka master Xuanzang. He journeyed to India in the 3rd year of the Chengquan era, in 629, and returned in the 19th year of the same era. During his journey, he conducted a thorough investigation of Buddhism in India, and on his return introduced to China the school known as the Dharma characteristics. The school is to the Tendai school as fire is to water. Xuanzang brought with him works such as the Profound Secret Sutra, the treatise on the stages of yoga practice, and the treatise on the consciousness-only doctrine that were known to Tendai, and claimed that although the Lotus Sutra is superior to the other sutras, it is inferior to the Profound Secret Sutra. Since this was a text that Tendai had never seen, his followers in these latter times, shallow as they were in wisdom and understanding, seemed inclined to accept this allegation, right? The teacher's no longer around, so this guy comes and he says, oh, look at this potion. This one's superior. Oh, okay, well, maybe we should follow that, right? It's just, it's pitiful, really, our human nature to go with whatever the flavor of the day is, right? Moreover, Emperor Taizong was a worthy ruler, but he placed extraordinary, resolute mind in the teachings of Xuanzang. So Xuanzang evidently got the emperor's ear. And once that happens, there's tremendous influence to be wielded. As a result, though there were those who might have wished to speak out in protest, they were, as too often is the case, awed by the authority of the throne and held their peace. Thus, regrettable as it is to relate, the Lotus Sutra was thrust aside once again. Xuanzang taught that the 3-vehicle doctrine represents the truth, and the 1-vehicle doctrine set forth in the Lotus Sutra is an expedient means, and expounded the theory of the 5 natures into which all beings are inherently divided. So he regressed way back in the earlier teachings of Buddhism and claimed superiority. Though these new teachings came from India, it was as though the non-Buddhist teachings of India had invaded the land of China. The Lotus Sutra was declared to be a mere expedient teaching, and the Profound Secret Sutra the embodiment of the truth. Thus, the testimony given by Shakyamuni, many treasures in all the Buddhas of the 10 directions, was totally ignored. And instead, Xuanzang and his disciple Zun En were looked upon as living Buddhas. It boggles my mind, and I know it's 2020 vision, but 2020 hindsight. Sorry, but how could you? Wouldn't it bend your brain to say, I'm trying to think of a contemporary example here. I don't know. As I think about it, I think it's pretty regular occurrence in our modern world. We look to the inventor of something, the founder, the one who discovered. And at some point, we look upon that person as inferior. How great does one's ego have to be to practice or to become knowledgeable about a practice or an invention, a modality, and at some point discard them as the inventor and founder and claim for yourself that you know better. You know, if you know something different from what that inventor created, then go invent your own thing. Why supersede someone in their invention, in their discovery, right? It'd be like, and I don't remember his name, but the point I can still make. What if you took all the people who achieved the amazing task of summiting Mount Everest? You, having never climbed a mountain, or maybe climbed Mount Shasta, claim that your effort in climbing Mount Shasta far supersedes any of those clowns who went up Mount Everest. How could you do that with a straight face? Or even more to the point, go to climb Mount Everest, not succeed, and claim that getting halfway there is a victory over those who summited. How does that make sense? And that is in fact what's happening here. This is the power of authoritarianism. It's unsubstantiated superiority. It's unreasonable or unsubstantiated. I don't think there's a clearer way to say it. Superiority. Just by claiming it, just by saying it loudly and rudely enough, then you might is right. Buddhism stands in the face of that. Here it is, throughout history, not just Buddhism, of course. Later, during the reign of Empress Wu, a monk named Dharma teacher Fatsang appeared, who, in order to vent his anger over the attacks that had been made earlier by the great teacher Tendai on the Flower Garland Sutra, founded a new school called the Flower Garland School. Oh, yeah? In doing so, he utilized a new translation of the Flower Garland Sutra that had recently been completed. Really? Using it to supplement the older translation of the Flower Garland Sutra that had been the target of Tendai's attack, this school proclaimed that the Flower Garland Sutra represents the root teachings of the Buddha, while the Lotus Sutra represents a branch. To sum up, the teachers in the northern and southern China ranked the Flower Garland Sutra first, the Nirvana second, and the Lotus Sutra third, right back to Faoyan. The great teacher Tendai ranked the Lotus Sutra first, the Nirvana second, and the Flower Garland third, and the newly founded Flower Garland School ranked the Flower Garlands first, how amazing, the Lotus second, and the Nirvana third. Oh, well, finally we have the order right. Where are we time-wise? Okay. Later in the reign of Emperor Xuanzang, the Tripitaka master Shan Wu Wei journeyed to China from India, bringing with him the Mahavajracana and the Susiddhikara Sutras. In addition, the Tripitaka master Kangchi appeared with the Diamond Crown Sutra. Moreover, Chinkanchi had a disciple named the Tripitaka master Pukung. These three men were all Indian, who not only came from the very distinguished families, but were in character quite different from the monks of China. The doctrines that they taught appeared highly impressive in that they included mudras, hand positions, and mantras of all sorts, something that had never been known in China since the introduction of page-turning karma, since the introduction of Buddhism in the latter Han. In the presence of this new Buddhism, the emperor bowed his head and the common people pressed their palms together in reverence. Ooh, new magic. These men taught that whatever the relative merits of the flower garland, profound secrets, wisdom, nirvana, and Lotus Sutra might be, they were all exoteric teachings. The various preachings of the thus come one Shakyamuni, the Mahavajracana Sutra, that they had newly introduced, on the other hand, represented the royal pronouncements of the Dharma King Mahavajracana. The other sutras were the multiple sayings of the common people. This sutra was the unique pronouncement of the Son of Heaven. Works such as the Flower Garland Nirvana could never hope to reach as high as the Mahavajracana Sutra, even with the help of a ladder. Only the Lotus Sutra bears some resemblance to the Mahavajracana Sutra. Wow! Amazing what the will to power can wrought. It's makes me emotional to think of how fortunate you and I are to be able to once again read, pry into, study, share the words of the Lotus Sutra, unencumbered by an authority or a government, a commissioner of religion, whatever it be, stepping on us and saying, no, don't do that. We can, for ourselves, today, so many hundreds and thousands of years after Shakyamuni, read his amazing words of encouragement and method, the one vehicle, the one sure thing that will open your Buddha mind. That we can do it so simply, so immediately. It's really a testament to its enduring clarity that all of these egos and machinations and governments and countries and scholars, that it could stay this clear, even with all of these other meddlers, that it still holds true. There is no other with this clarity to reach and attain Buddha clarity for every single person who practices it. Is it the only way to become enlightened? Perhaps not. But it is the only way that works unquestionably, immediately for everyone. And if you're asking yourself after years of practice or however long you've practiced why you're not floating on a lotus petal yet, you are. The fact that you don't recognize it is your samsaric mind getting in the way. Perhaps that's the motivation you need to get back to your mandala, awaken your Gohonzon, achieve your Buddha wisdom, understand how to tap into that clarity and hang on to it in your daily life. That is what all of these stories are about. This is what the expedient means is. This is what the doctrine is. This is the goal of Buddhism. Why? Why do you want to achieve this constant reminder? Your bodhisattva life here on earth is the Buddha way to clarify your mind, to see at every moment the wonderful, amazing process, the play of life with compassion and awe. Because that's the way to live this life, with that awe, instead of succumbing to our desires and attachments and suffering. If you're suffering, it's because you're dealing with your karma, your attachments. If you want to break free, chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. You will. It just works. Thanks for participating. Thanks for reminding me how important this practice is. Words fail me in my appreciation for your participation, your practice, your doing this, your support in doing this, in watching these videos and commenting below. For some of you who have the fortune to do so, the donations, the financial support, absolutely critical for me to be able to keep doing this. This being not my practice, but yes, my practice, in that it extends to doing these videos, study, research, talking to you guys. This is my study, resolve, and practice, right? Make it yours. Make it so. And I'll see you in the next one. We got lots more to go. Bye for now. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo.